Hello and welcome to NFT Decree. I'm Barry and we're back playing Dark Country. And I've had a request to go over keywords, right? So a proper glossary for the terms in the game and explain what they do. But I'll take that a little bit further and I'll go over a few things that the game doesn't tell you. Because there's a couple of mechanisms or interactions that are not immediately obvious, and a couple of things that you just don't know until it kind of happens to you. But we'll start by going through the keywords, and I'll just run through the cards until I find a keyword that we've never seen, and it kind of explain what it does. So Inspire is the first one here. So Inspire creates a new card on the board, which is a totem. A totem is permanently rooted, so it can't attack, and 0 cost 3 defense to start with, and doesn't do anything on its own. But every time you play a card with the Inspire ability, it levels up. So your totem levels up. The next level for the totem would be a 0/5, and then every creature with the native tag, the native trait that you play, gets +1/+1. So a level 2 totem on the board and playing a young blood, this would come out at 2/2. The next level up, and it's a great question because I can't remember from the top of my head and it doesn't tell you anywhere. This is my point. You'll get... do you get a random keyword at the next level up? So it'll be a 0/7 and you get either Fortify, Guardian, something else. Like, what's the next level up? Well, you get a random keyword when you deploy as well. So the totem doesn't power up natives that are already on the board. It's only on the turn that they're played based on the level of your totem. So if you can, any undeploy effects that may generate Inspire will happen before you hit the board, and that's going to be the same for any deploy effect. And then once you hit the board, it will check what level the totem is and give you the appropriate buffs. So Inspire puts a totem on the board. It can be destroyed, it can't attack, and the higher level it is, the more buffs that your native cards get. Then last word. So that's keyword to come up. Well, maybe better off showing it on a card. Do we have something with last word? Last word. Summon Cultist Adept. So last word is when that creature dies from whatever fashion, right? Whether it's destroyed, changed, removed from the board effectively, the effect triggers off. So a Cultist Adept being the 2/1 1-drop guy there. And that will... any creature with last word, that happens when they leave the board. And that will kind of immediately happen. I don't know if deploy effects trigger from summons or not. I think they might. Not that there's one on this, but just for reference. If a last word does have a summon effect, or brings in a creature that has a summon effect. Then Spell Immune does kind of what it says on the tin. Cannot be affected by spells, so you can't target it for damage with an Incinerate, with a Lightning Bolt, even Area of Effects shouldn't affect it. So you'll have to hit that with a creature in order to take it out. Makes sense enough. Then, things with the ability written on the cards, you just have to read what they do in the cards. Those can be unique and card specific, but you can just kind of read what they do. Fortify. Fortify puts a visual barrier around the card, and what it means is that your opponent must attack cards with Fortify before cards without Fortify. So that only applies to creatures attacking, and some creatures can get around this using deploy effects. But if this had... so both of these have Fortify, and if they were on the board and the Peasant was on the board... well, that's a bad example because you've got Stealth. If the Young Blood was on the board, they would have to attack either Agonizing Follower or Liquidator, because they both have Fortify, before they can attack Young Blood. But if they had any board wipes, that affects the whole board. If they had any... I'll explain one interesting interaction. So this deploy effect on a Vortex, attack creature multiple times until one dies, can get around that. It can ignore fortify when it's deployed, and there's another 2 of them that does it, but I'll come back to that just as we go along. So fortify must be attacked before other creatures. Fatal Strike. Fatal Strike was once called One Shot, and if any creature, regardless of its health, is damaged by a creature with Fatal Strike, then it dies. So the creature that has been hit by the creature with Fatal Strike, that creature will die. So even though this guy only has 1 attack, if he were to hit something like this ghost with 2/3, even though it only takes 1 damage, it would still be destroyed, regardless of its health, really. So that's what Fatal Strike does. This does what it says, spell damage. So spell damage includes things like Incinerate, includes area of effect spells, includes direct targeted damage. As long as this is on the board, your spell damage will do +1. So this is not permanent, right? So this is a temporary effect that only applies while it's on the board. So that's important to note. Then stealth. If a character or a creature has stealth, you'll see a sort of fog appear over the top of the card. And this card cannot be targeted by creatures attacking, and it should prevent targeting by spells, but at the moment it doesn't. But one of the bug fixes on the list is to fix stealth. So at the moment, a creature in stealth can be targeted by spells, but in the future it will not. And the creature in stealth cannot be attacked. So it's like the opposite of fortify. Instead of having to be attacked, they cannot be attacked by creatures. Now, it would still always be affected by area of effect spells. Anything that does, anything that doesn't target. So anything that just says hit all of your opponent's creatures or something along those lines would still be affected by. But if it has to be targeted, and part of the attack is obviously choosing what to attack, they wouldn't be pickable. And deploy. So deploy effects, like I say, occur before the card hits the board. So if there's a deploy effect, the sequence of events is effectively declare the card to play, do the deploy effect, card comes into play. And so here you would heal something for 2 and give it +2, +0. But the reason things like that are important, I'll highlight on future cards here. So Fatal Strike we've gone over, Inspire we've gone over, Deploy we've gone over. Frenzy. So Frenzy is another one. So when you play a card, it can't attack on the same turn that it comes out. So this gives this sort of flow to the game where you're asking a question of your opponent, can you deal with this card? If they can deal with it, fine. Can they put a threat of their own down? If they can't deal with it, then they have to deal with the consequences of leaving that card on the board. Frenzy, however, means that you can attack on the same turn that you're played. So you can play this card for 2 and immediately attack for 2, and that could be to an opponent's creature, could be to a hero, directly to a hero. So if you need that last couple of bits of damage to get across the line, you could play a Frenzy character if you had an item, which we've not seen yet. In fact, yeah, items, there's another thing didn't go over. You can play an item on it, and if that boosts its damage, it can attack at the same time. So items I didn't explain. Excuse me. Items must be played on top of a creature, and they give benefits to the creature holding that item. When a creature dies, the item also leaves play, and it does mean items are a little bit weak at the moment. I think what might be, one option might be to leave them on the field or something, or they attach to something else. At least have a couple items like that. I mean, you could even make them weaker if that was the case. As long as you got multiple uses from it. But still, there are a couple of pretty decent items that you might want to think about including. But it goes on top of a creature and applies the benefits, whatever that may be. Usually item specific, so you'll have to read what they do. Fine, so deploy, stealth, particular effects, a creature that one. Guardian, so Guardian's another keyword. So unlike Fortify, the creature with Guardian does not have to be attacked, but you'll get a visual representation of like sandbags at the top of the card, and that means that they'll be able to take 1 damage, or any amount of damage in a single hit without losing any health. So even if it was hit by a 10-10 creature, a creature with, and it was only a 3-2, if you had Guardian, then it would just absorb that damage and you wouldn't lose any health. This is useful for, particularly, if you put it on a card with Fatal Strike, your Fatal Strike goes through and kills them and you don't take any damage, so you live to fight another day. But that also applies the other way around. Guardian prevents you from taking any damage, so Fatal Strike doesn't work. So maybe I should clarify that Fatal Strike, if it does damage, will destroy the creature that is damaged. So Guardian, sandbags, take a hit. Root. Now, Root's worded a couple of different ways in a couple of different cards, but effectively, when you see Root, it means choose a target creature or enemy creature, typically, to root. And remember, if root is, it cannot attack. Now, root only lasts for a turn, unlike the totem, where it's a permanent effect on the card. So if you need to stop somebody swinging in with a huge creature next turn, you can play something with root, lock them down for a turn, and hopefully find an answer the following turn. But it prevents them attacking for 1 turn. I've said before, root 2, root 3, or, root 2 creatures, root 3 creatures, would make that effect a bit stronger. I think it's a decent, what's the word? A decent alternative, that's the word. A decent alternative to things like mute, which we've not come on to yet. Nothing. Some cards have just, permanent effects. Whenever you deploy another cultist, this gains +1/+1. This will check every time another card comes into play. But that's just a card-specific ability, not a keyword. Fatal Strike, deploy. So, like I say, with Vortex, attack a creature multiple times until one of them dies. There's also Hanged Lady, Inspector, same thing with more cost and bigger stats. Now, this can get around Fortify. At the moment, it's not supposed to, but when I highlighted this to the game designer, he was thinking about making it so that it ignores Fortify, but that should be clarified on the card, right? Attack creature multiple times until one of them dies, ignoring Fortify. But just what that means, of course, is this would swing into, let's say this was on the board and you played this would attack this, would do 1 damage, would take 3 damage, it would attack again, which would do 1 damage killing it, but it would take 3 damage killing it. So it's a spot removal tool, and because it does get around Fortify, and there is the possibility that you may survive another turn and just be a presence on the board, these ones are quite good. Wolf, so deploy, triggers a deploy. It says here it's chosen randomly, but that is not the case. You get to choose which creature's ability triggers. So when you play it, an arrow will appear and you'll choose which one triggers. So you can, you don't have to set it up as much as it might look like. It is chosen by you when you play it. None of these. I'll do the same things. Deploy we've seen, last word we've seen. This one, and I'll maybe point out some interesting effects as well. So Dire Witch, when your hero takes damage, summon a 2/1 cultist adept. So this is, if this is on the board and you ignore it, and you're hitting your enemy hero and they're getting these 2/1 cultist adepts appearing, that's why. So that's sort of a unique ability on that one. Draw, draw does what it says, right? It's not a keyword, but it will draw what it says. So random native from your card might just be draw 1 card, might be draw a particular, might draw a spell from your deck or draw an item from your deck, something along those lines, but not a keyword, but does kind of what it says. Then here, Frenzy we've covered, but Mute is something else. So when you mute a creature, it becomes blank. It resets the creature, and it becomes blank. So let's say something like this guy. Destroy the friendly creature for +2/+2. He was a 4/4. If you were to mute him, he would become a 2/2 again. And if he had an ongoing effect, does anything have, let's say this one, if you were to mute this creature, then that would not trigger anymore. Like whenever you deployed another cultist, it would not gain +1/+1. So the text box effectively becomes blank, and there's a reset to the stats. Now there is a visual bug in the game at the moment that should be fixed at some point, where although the attack resets, any boosted health remains at the larger number. But just know that when you've muted a creature, actually it's gone back to its default number. So that's something that's useful to know. Deploy, stealth, root. This guy's interesting. He does 2 damage to your enemy hero and adds to his hit points at the end of turn. So you're going to see some end of turn triggers as well. Those are things to watch out for. So when this guy comes down, he is going to be doing 2 to either you or your opponent, depending what side of the board it's on, every turn. Things like this, right? Deploy, gain +1/+0 for every card in your hand, and +0/+1 for every card in your opponent's hand. The deploy effect triggers before this card is on the board. It's still effectively in your hand, so it does count itself, right? And that's an important thing to note if you're wondering why you've got more than you perhaps thought you would. Deploy effects occur before the card has left your hand and come into play, so that's when the check occurs. Deploy, draw. Things like this turn off. So there's a couple of abilities that turn off other abilities. So fatal strikes don't work. Fine. This one gains attack every time it takes damage. There's a few cards like that. Last word. So when it dies, draw a card. Destroy means just regardless of health, remove it from the board. Mute. Deploy. Actually, I should be looking for interesting effects as well. Deploy. So cost reducers. So whilst there was a cultist cost reducer I glossed over there. This is unclear, right? So I think a couple of them are permanent effects. If we go back to this guy, I don't know why. Right, so this guy's different than the other one. So the deploy effect on this, if every creature in your deck is a cultist, they cost 1 less. So that occurs to the cards in the deck. Okay, and so on the cards themselves, the cost will be reduced by 1. The difference between that and this is an effect that's ongoing whilst this card is in play. So this will reduce the cost of Ghost by 1 while this card is in play, not permanently. Certainly I think, a permanent boost to Ghosts could be okay, but that's the difference, right? So the deploy effect affects the cards in the deck. This is only whilst it is in play. Destroy a wounded creature. So a wounded creature is anything with it's taken damage. Doesn't matter even if it's buffed above that damage, and the visual representation is a red number. So as long as it's a red number, it has been wounded, and you can destroy it with Banshee. So when Banshee comes down, it kills anything. So even if it's got 99 hit points, as long as that's red, if it's gone from 100 to 99, Banshee will be able to kill it. Add to hand. So when you play it, cards come to your hand. So summons on the board, and add to hand is what it says. You get cards. So summon the card to the board, and add to hand is add the cards to your hand. What else? So Brainwash, convert target enemy creature to a 2/1 adept and put it on your side of the table. So this again doesn't care about how powerful a creature is or how much health it has or anything along those lines. For 6, you can get any creature on your opponent's side of the board over to your board. It ignores Guardian, can ignore Fortify. It doesn't. At the moment, it ignores Stealth, but it won't be able to once that's fixed, because it is a spell that targets, and when you target something, you can't target something in stealth, or you shouldn't be able to target something in stealth. Then the Hive. The Hive's an interesting card. At the end of your turn, turn random adjacent creature into the Hive. Now, I have seen this fail to work one time, and I'm not 100% sure. I need to check on this one. I think the original card you play has this ability. And whilst the copies of the card also have that ability, I've not seen it work. Right, so I saw a copy of this card fail to convert a card to the Hive after I took out the original Hive. But I saw the original Hive convert 2 cards, because it took me 2 turns to get rid of it, into Hives. So worth paying attention to if you're going to play the Hive. It can be what's the word? It can be, it might not work right. I don't know whether the copies have these out. So if you're playing the Hive, test it, see what it does, make sure it works right. Fire Demon, deploy, give 1 damage to everyone. So everyone includes you, includes your side of the board, includes your opponent's hero, your hero. Just be aware of that. If you're down to 1 life and you play this, you will die. The Dark Water Mermaid is a 1/8. So as soon as this is damaged or destroyed, I want to say or destroyed, it becomes a 4/8 Raging Mermaid. And I'm not sure if there's an additional ability on it, but it might be. The different, and notice here, undeployed gives all friendly creatures +0/+1. This remains even. This isn't conditional on this creature being on the board. This is something that happens on deploy, and then those creatures have that stat until they're damaged or destroyed, right? So that's important. Cost reduction. If you draw a card, it's a native, costs 2 less. Some cards put things like a knife and fork into your hand, which I'm not 100% sure why I can only ever play 1 a turn, but sometimes happens. But knife +1 attack, fork +1 defense, something like that, or the other way around. 0 cost, so things can summon cards into your hand, put cards into your hand. Short, so this doesn't explain what this is. So summon Short's Heart. Short's Heart is a 0/4 card, 0 cost, and with the text on it saying that if Short's Heart is destroyed, destroy Short. So if so your opponent doesn't actually have to take this out for 10/10, because if the 6 for a 10/10's way above the curve, they only have to take out the heart. So what you need to do is protect that heart. You could put Guardian and Fortify on this Short, for example, make it so they have to attack this first, although spells will still take it out. But you do actually have Granny, so put target friendly creature back into your hand. So Short's Heart is a creature, and returning it to hand is not the same as destroying it. So yeah, what if you did something like that? If things go back to your hand, so if you've got Granny, which you can choose, or Pale Nun, which your opponent can choose, then it's not destroying it. So last words won't trigger, and the destroy effects won't trigger. So you could play Short, then Granny. So if you had 10 mana, at which point you've got a 10/10 body, and whatever Granny is a 2/3 body for 10, which is about right. It's decent, but it's a 2-card combo. Otherwise, you need to protect that heart so you don't lose your Short. Which is fine. Increased spell damage. Any of these are only while they're on the board. Same with the Ghost. Onslaught. So here's a new keyword. So Onslaught creatures deal excess damage to the hero behind them. Right. So if you had this Mogollon monster, 5/5 with Onslaught, and you attacked You attacked this 2/2 creature. The extra 3 damage that you would do happens to the hero. So you'll do 3 damage to your opponent because the excess damage pushes through the creature and onto the hero. Then we've got Simple Shepherd, turn all our creatures into 1/1 black cat. So you've probably seen that in some of the games. It's really powerful. So it's a full board wipe. But the black cats are cards you could put in naturally, but I wouldn't recommend it. But they come back to hand when they're dead. So you can stuff up people's hands by playing this, wiping their board. Let's say you've got this and fire spirit or something, which costs 11. You push 5 cards back to their hand, and then suddenly they can't draw anymore, or they've got all these bad cards in their hand that they don't want to play. Roots, natives in your hand cost less. So this is an effect again that's only while on the board, which makes that quite weak. It's not like a permanent reduction, because it's not a deploy effect. It's not like deploy, all natives in your hand cost 1 less, right? This is a permanent effect whilst he's on the board, or a constant effect while he's on the board. Summon Cutlass at the end of turn, whenever another beast dies. Destroy all natives. I mean, like I say, I've given some views on changing that as well. So Owl Bears cost 1 less for every card in your hand. So this is an effect that is active while it's in your hand, and the check for the cost occurs before you play it. So what that means is, if you have 6 cards in hand, this has a functional 2 cost. This will change from an 8 to a 2. And it will let you play it for 2 mana, but then your mana will go to -1 because it thinks that there's only 5 in your hand and you paid 3. But it will let you play it. It includes itself, is my point, when determining cost. So before it comes out, it determines the cost, and it can mean that you go into negative mana, which definitely cost me a game last night. If you can watch, last night's Feckin' Bugs video, it going to -1 mana meant I couldn't play spells, 0 cost spells. But it's what it is, and so this probably needs to be changed functionally. It costs 1 less for every other card in your hand, and that will just be more consistent. Root all enemies, Onslaught. Fine, so that's all the sort of keywords there. Let's go on to the Crusaders. So bandits have this ability to gain 1 Char and Zobo, and whenever it talks about COs, that's what it's talking about. Like, I didn't know what that meant. It's not at all obvious that CO means Char and Zobo. Now, Char and Zobo is a 0 cost spell, I think. Don't think it's maybe got a trait or anything, but I think it's a spell that heals your hero for 2 health. And lots of cards trigger off having played COs, because you want to gather a hand full of them, but you have to be careful not to have too many, because it will take up the space for other cards. But where it says something like here, so deploy, game 1 Char and Zobo, and if you play 2 Char and Zobo this turn, game 1 more. So you'd play 2 Char and Zobos, you would play this, and you would get 2 Char and Zobos back. So let's just, if there's nothing else new in here, Frenzy, when you play a Char and Zobo, put back into a hand. Do you get to choose which one it goes into? This doesn't mean put the Char and Zobo back into your hands, because that would be... Now that's what I thought it was originally, but now I realise that would just be broken, because you would be able to heal up infinitely as long as you had 1 Char and Zobo and this bank robber. So no, when you play a Char and Zobo, the bank robber returns to your hand, and play it again. So you can drop it. I mean, it's quite expensive, right? You play 4, you could drop it for Frenzy and go across, play a Char and Zobo, pick it up, play it again. So if this went to the sort of late game, you'd be able to get, let's say it was turn 12, you'd be able to do 9 damage with this for 12, because you could play it 3 times and pick it up 2 or 3 times. Get a Char and Zobo at the end of turn. Blah, blah, blah. This one's an interesting one, the Devil's Ring. +6/+0, destroy Wielder at the end of your turn. So Wielder is the card that is played on. But in order for this to trigger, it has to still be alive at the end of the turn, right? So if you don't survive because you've traded into a creature, this will not come back to hand. It has to be, this trigger at the end of your turn has to be on the board in order for this to activate. 50% chance to get 2 Charon's Obols. Nah. Mute creature, copy its stats. So the mute effect happens first, and if you remember, the mute effect puts the stats back to their default number. So if you've reduced it, it's the default stats on that card that Pandiera is going to get copy, right? So if you copy a 10/10 mountain lion, don't be surprised when your stats are a 1/1, because the mute effect happens first, then you copy its stats. This is an example of something with memory. Game +2/+0 for every Charon's Obol you've played this game. So this will just keep ticking up every time you play a Charon's Obol until it comes down. And then remember, because it's a deploy effect, it occurs before it's on the board. Once it's on the board, if you play another Charon's Obol, it's not going to tick up. This is an interesting effect. Return all your cards that died this turn to your hand and set their cost to 1. I've not found a use for them yet, and you can have 3 of them. But it is interesting. But the problem is, it's return all your cards that died this turn. So it's not like on the last turn where your opponents can kill all your guys and you can get them back. So interesting. Maybe they'll change it. I don't know. And this cost, so 15 cost is huge, but every time you play it, so there's another thing with a memory. But this will tick down in your deck and in your hand. You might see a slight delay on it once you play the Charon's Obol. I have done it where I've played 2 Charon's Obols, it still showed 14. And then once I ended my turn, it went to 13. So I'm not 100% sure on when that procs necessarily, but hopefully it doesn't screw you up too much and that you could play a handful on the same turn you want to play it. Cool. So this beverages, right? So here's a new one. At the end of your turn, put a random beverage into your hand. The beverage is water or beer. I think it's whiskey, and I'm not entirely sure what all the differences are, but if it's water or beer, it's basically, again, +1 attack or +1 defense on that one. This is not as, what's the word I'm after? At best, this is like a 50-50, right? So the deal 1 damage to a random enemy on deploy is random enemy, so that could be the hero or a creature. So if you've set it up so that the creature's down to 1 and you want to play this, it might hit the enemy hero and not the creature, if you're wondering why it doesn't die. So be aware that enemy includes heroes and creatures. Random drink. So the difference between a random beverage and a random drink, I don't think is anything. It's just wording. They can tidy that up later on. I've spoken about this being a numbo, but I've never tested it. But your items cost 1 less. So while he's on the board, your items cost 1 less. And so if he was out and you had the sheriff's gun, this would cost 4, which would mean if you wanted to play this guy, if you're holding an item that costs 5 or more, summon a copy of this creature, it wouldn't trigger, because this would be worth 4 in your hand while this is down. So I think that's a bit of a numbo, right? So a non-combo. So just be aware of that. Here, enemies versus enemy creature again. So deal 5 damage to 2 random enemies. It could hit the opponent's hero. So be aware of that if you're trying to take out two creatures specifically. Same here, random enemy can include the enemy hero. This is a constant effect. So if you were to play another creature down while he's out, they would get fortify. But be aware of that. Like if everybody's got fortify, then the mayor's the only guy that's safe, right? And you know your hero, because they have to go through all the cards with fortify first. This gives Guardian and Fortify and a strong defense, so very useful. This they've just updated. If you've seen my previous video, the ability was, wouldn't necessarily say worse, but different. Probably worse. But +8, +0, when the wielder kills, you can attack again. So you can smash into your opponent's board. For this, it's going to take out most things, even on a 1 damage creature, it becomes a 9. Really, that's your combo, right? I mean, or in fact, all 3 of these would be a brilliant combo if you wanted to do a board wipe. You'd be able to play this, give it Guardian Fortify, give it the Burning Colts. I mean, how many points is that? 14, 22. So it'd be a very long game if that had happened. But then you would swing in. You would kill something, you would swing again, take some damage, plus you'd swing again, take some damage, plus, until eventually you've killed everything on their board, and you're attacking for maybe, say, +4, +8, so that would be 5, 13. So you'd swing in for 13 to their hero at the end of that turn. But you have to be careful what you put this on, because whilst it's good at taking out one thing, you need the health in order to really take advantage of it. So you can put the Butcher down one turn, turn 7, say, and put the Colts on him next turn. If he's still alive, maybe your opponent's like, well, I can't really deal with him, but he's not doing a lot of damage. And then suddenly you can boom, 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 they're bored. Fine, blah, blah, blah. Heal. Heal's another keyword here. So a couple of things. Heal typically won't allow you to go beyond your 40 hit points max, but there are a couple of cards that do let you do that. So if we go back to the I mean, not that I can show you, but if we go back to the Charon's Obols, that says heal 2, okay, but you can't go above 40. Something like Bat Swarm, heal your hero for 2 hit points, should actually say gain 2 hit points. I think this one can put you above 40. Not 100% sure whether it's this one or Raining Blood. Heal your hero for its cost. One of these, but not the other, lets you go above 40. And I think it's Bat Swarm, so I think there should be gain 2 hit points. So just be aware of that. If you're ever above 40, it's probably because one of these 2 spells. Anything else in here? Summons, deal 2 damage, destroy friendly creatures. This is an interesting one. Last word, destroy every creature who attacked it. This is a memory. This is a memory over multiple turns if it comes to it. So if your opponent has attacked this and not killed it, and you can attack a different one of their creatures on your turn, even if it dies, or you want it to die, you're actually going to trade up there. So it will remember that the other card attacked you and survive. Let's just say there was a Skeleton Archer and a Bear Rider. Skeleton Archer attacked the Tortured, didn't die, did some damage there, and then on your turn you attacked the Bear Rider, did the last 4 damage to kill you. Both of these creatures would die, even though you hadn't done enough damage to them, because it's this last word effect, destroy every creature who attacked it. So it's not every creature who attacked it, it should be destroy every creature who damaged it. Wait, is that right? I need to test that, but I think it's every creature who damaged it, which is why Bear Rider would die, but maybe that is not the case. Maybe double check on that one, but I think that's how that works. This is an interesting effect. Destroy all wounded creatures. So that's on your, your whole board. When another creature is wounded, destroy it. Excuse me. But this applies to both sides, right? So it applies to your side as well. If you're looking for a very expensive board wipe, I mean, you could Fire Demon, right? 1 damage to everybody. and then then play this. That would take out the board, but that's like a 13 cost board wipe, which is quite a lot. Then this guy, every time this creature takes damage, deal 2 damage to enemy hero. So if you're hitting this guy, be careful that it's not going to kill you. You can destroy him without triggering this, so something like Brainwash or anything that gets rid of him in a oneer without actually dealing damage. Is there only Brainwash? Does everything else have to do some sort of damage? I think so, but be careful not to kill yourself when you're killing this cannoneer. Then this spell damage +1 only applies while the item's on a creature in play. This effect only applies while it is in play. Won't trigger while it's in your hand or in your deck. This doesn't need to be down to see the spell getting played. So as long as you've played a spell, even if you play this afterwards, you'll still get the card draw. This only applies while on the board. This is a constant effect. So if your board ever gets emptied, this will get the +3/+0. This should say can only attack if a spell was played this turn. So this still suffers from summoning sickness, right? Or can't attack on the turn that you play it, even if you play a spell. So I know multiple people that have fallen into that trap where you play this and then you play a spell and you still can't attack with this. This is a restriction. This is an additional restriction, shall we say. So this has to be down for a turn. Then on the next turn you have to play a spell in order for this to attack. But it cannot attack on the first turn it comes down. This has the wrong words on it, wrong numbers at least. Deal 4 damage to target creature. Deal 7 damage to target creature or 4 to all enemy creatures, which makes it strictly better than Tornado. So Tornado needs to either do 5 or drop in cost or something like that. So that is it. That is all the cards. Let's think about a couple of other hidden mechanisms in the game. So let's have a look at tournaments while we're here. So I finished on 100. Don't know how respectable that is. I don't know who's under here, but it's quite a way off, right? See what happens. But the game has additional mechanisms for ending the game. Once you're out of cards, then for every card you draw, you're taking a damage. So the first card you draw will be 1 damage, the second card 2 damage, the third card 3 damage, and all the way up. So the game will end at some point, right? Because every time you try to draw, you're taking damage. And there's nothing there to draw. So that never really comes up. In a tournament setting, in the best of 3, the player that starts first will always be first in all 3 games. It doesn't alternate. I've suggested that they change that. What else is... there's one other thing that I want to talk about that the game doesn't tell you, to do with the sort of board state and stuff. But I have forgotten. What else doesn't the game tell you? It was on the tip of my tongue before I started the video, but now I can't remember. Having gone through all those cards, I can't remember what it was. Something that came up, if you've got a deck, let's say you've got a new deck, blah, 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 whatever. And this is your only deck, for example. You know what, doesn't matter, back. Yes. So if you've got a deck, don't forget to tick this default deck box, otherwise you won't be able to play. The game will just crash when it opens. You'll get into a match, but then no deck will load, and then the game just freezes, and you'll have to quit out, and your opponent will have to quit out as well. So whenever you want to change your deck, you have to tick that default deck button, you have to go into it, click default deck, and work from there. What else? There was one other thing to do with the board and like the gameplay, and I've completely forgotten what it was. I'll put it in the comments if I ever remember. And don't forget, if you want to check out the game, use my link below. Sign up, you'll get a free pack of cards. But again, you don't need the cards at the moment until the alpha is over. At the moment, you have access to everything. So until next time, this is NFT Decree signing off.